The first time I met my next guest was when she had written one of her very first books. Since then, Hazel Edwards has been very busy at the keyboard, writing and publishing. Not just a piece of cake, being an author, is just out. The classic There's a Hippopotamus on the Roof Eating Cake is celebrating 36 years this year. Still going strong. This year, along with touring theatre productions, Hazel Edwards has agreed to talk to us today and tell us more about what she has been up to over the last 30 years. Hazel, welcome in.
Thank you very much, Leigh. I have fond memories of you calming me down in my first radio interview.
Very, very, very much. I was talking to my wife, May, about that the other night, and I said, remember, Hazel, and we discussed you, and you'd autographed a couple of books for us.
I was very nervous.
And I said to you, just pretend you and I are talking to one another and just having a conversation. You sat back there, and I don't think we could stop talking.
No, it was very calming, and I'm very grateful to you.
Well, you're a lovely lady, and still are. Gee, you've been doing a lot of things since you and I last chatted. Tell us about your recent forays.
Well, the one that's most relevant to your audience is, of course, the touring production of Hippo the musical, which I'd have to say has been one of the literary highlights of my life, because for somebody who's not really very good at music and who can't dance, to have somebody like Gary Ginnivan turn my picture book into 50 minutes of joyous theatre for children and nostalgic parents has been terrific. I sat there the other day watching the faces of the audience as well as the actors, and I thought, there's nothing quite like this experience, because often when you're an author, you write when you're alone, and you're not always there when somebody reads your book.
Quite a different experience, I'd imagine, as you say, turning around, looking at the audience and seeing the expressions on their faces. You were down here at the Cardinia Cultural Centre last Saturday.
Yes,
what was the response like from the kids?
Oh, very enthusiastic. What I really like is the fact that there were a lot of three-generational families there, and often it was the grandparent who'd initially read the book, who was probably sort of on a par to me in age. Then there was what I call the butte blokes, the dad usually, or the mum, and then the young ones, and they all took something away from it. Like, you could see them all being involved, because the production's actually very well paced, so that for young ones who've usually got an attention span of about a minute for an age of their life, and there's a lot of 6-year-olds in the audience, there's something happening every so often, and the parents are involved in doing it too. And so it was lovely to watch some big blokes actually doing things with the little 6-year-olds as they were told to be animals or whatever it was.
So how did it come about, Hazel? Did you go to a production company to say, look, would you like to turn this into a musical? Or did someone come to you and say, look, we'd like to take that book and turn it into a musical?
No, actually Gary Ginnivan came to me about 2 years ago, and it started from there. But I had met him not long after, probably about the time I did the first interview with you.
Really? Almost 100 years ago now.
Yes, that's right. When the Hippo book was out and had been out for a couple of years and was quite popular, and I was introduced to him by another theatre director who said, you could be interested in this, and it just wasn't possible at that time. And I was thrilled when he contacted me later, because I think it's interesting. People often say, well, how do you feel about somebody else taking your story on? Well, in my case, I've had illustrators who've taken a story on. I've had people act it out and so on. And I prefer to choose really good people and let them get on with what they're good at doing. And so I was thrilled that somebody of Gary's expertise would take it on, but then the actors are actually very energetic. And
well, they'd have to be being hippopotami, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I'm so impressed with Keisha, who plays the girl, who can both tap dance, sing and not even breathe heavily as she does it all.
It's incredible,
with
isn't
the
it?
hippo.
Yeah.
There's a scene with she tap dances with the hippo, which is memorable. So I'm thrilled when others can put another dimension to your work. A few years ago, there was a film made of the hippo too, which was done initially by two who had, in their 20s, who had loved it when they were a kid, and they brought their filmmaking skills to it. So this is not the only book I've been involved that's moved into other mediums, but I'm just so thrilled when someone does a fabulous job and takes it into dimensions that, for example, with the songs in the production. I mean, I don't write songs.
Who wrote the music for you?
This was done by Mark Jones underneath Gary's theatrical direction. Yeah. And memorable. I found myself humming them afterwards, and I'm not even musical.
I bet you have the CD in the car, though, when you listen to it.
No, but I think probably there will be a CD soon. But, I mean, it's just started travelling, and so the performance at Cardinia was one of the early ones, and it goes on to various centres, which are booked out, actually, Frankston and Geelong and so on, and then it moves into Sydney and then up into Queensland, which has been very receptive.
Hazel, when is this coming to Frankston? Because we've got a broadcast area right down to there. So.
Oh, right. Well, I'm actually going to be there. It's next Saturday the 9th.
Good.
At the Frankston Arts Centre.
Lovely place.
And I've agreed to be there. I think the first session is 10. It goes for 50 minutes. Because
you sign, don't you? That's
yeah,
nice.
And I'll be there to sign after that, which then leads into the next production at 2 p.m, I think it is. And I said I'd be there in between. Because what I find is that a lot of people have pre-loved copies.
Yes, yes.
And I'm very happy to sign pre-loved copies because it means they've been significant in those families.
Well, see, when you and I first met, this is the book we were talking about, and that's 30-odd years ago. And with that there, and I think the grandkids got a couple of those that you passed on to them. And from that stage, of course, as you just said before about the three generations, you've got us going to the grandkids, going down to their kids, and it's just wonderful. It really, really is. It's just phenomenal. Do you see a DVD coming out of this production, perhaps being made into DVD?
I honestly don't know because that's really Gary's area of expertise, and I would think it may be possible, but I think it probably will tour for a few years.
That's wonderful.
And I'm delighted with that. What you were saying about the three-generational aspect, it's interesting that I took my younger grandson, who is 6, to the production, and he sat there and watched it, and I thought, this is really weird. I've got a 6-year-old watching a performance that was inspired by a book, that was inspired by the ideas his uncle and his mum had when they were younger than he was.
Beautiful.
And it was really quite poignant in a way, and he certainly enjoyed it. He did ask me if there was a man in the hippo suit.
Oh.
And I said, what do you think? And then we moved on to something else.
That's part of the mystique and the magic, isn't it? It's
the logic of fantasy.
Isn't it?
And for many children, the large hippo is really the sort of big friend that's got all the answers, and everybody needs one of those, whether imaginary or real.
Hazel, you and I could talk for hours. I was going to talk to you too about hijabi girl,
yes.
Because I think that's important too, and you've gone into education and things through that. Tell us just briefly about hijabi girl. Well,
hijabi girl, which is just out too, is a junior chapter book, very easy to read. It came about because I was speaking to a group of librarians, and one of them came up to speak to me, Earthgate, who was absolutely passionate about books. She wore a hijab, and we got talking very energetically, and she said she had a real problem because for book parades, her students, she was at that stage in an Islamic school, her students were fed up with Red Riding Hood as being the only option to get dressed up in for a hijab, because the uniform of the school is a hijab.
Understand.
And so she said, could you please write a book, Hazel? And I said, well, write it yourself. I mean, you're familiar with the culture. And anyway, so it went backwards and forwards for quite a long time. I was very impressed with her. She invited our families became very friendly. And in the end, I agreed that we would write it together. And then we found there wasn't interest from mainstream publishers because they were alarmed by the title. And what we have really is a mainstream school story with 4 major characters, one of whom is a little girl in the hijab who's 8, who's quite feisty, who wants to start the Aussie Rules girls footy team with hijabs. She can't find a book with a girl in the hijab, so she and the others write their own, and she's really got lots to go about her. And the other 3 characters include a strong boy who's soccer mad, a reading rat, and a princess girl, and an illustrator. Anyway, we had great fun putting this together because it is mainstream and it's funny. And the disappointing thing was that every time there was a news item that related issues to do with Islamic issues, it equaled terrorism, equaled let's not publish that. And I thought this was really seriously worrying, because what happens is that once you know somebody personally, or once you've walked their life within a book, even if it's a fictional book, you can be a bit more tolerant of someone whose lifestyle is different. And we thought it was really important to share these things. So it's not a piece of propaganda, it's a fun book about a feisty girl. Anyway, in the end, I published it. And luckily, the library was prepared to support it, which was Craigieborn Library, which has 160 different languages in the area.
Goodness.
And we sold and signed every single book we had.
Well done. Hazel, I've got to get you back on another time because you and I have got so many more things to talk about, and we need perhaps a little bit longer to talk to you. I've got lots of questions to ask you. So look, we'll get you back on in a couple of weeks' time. But in the meantime, congratulations. You're down there at the Frankston Arts Centre, Saturday week the 9th, 10 o'clock, with Hippo Hippo the musical. Go and see the musical. Go and see this lovely lady, and she'll sign the books and everything for you. Hazel,
as long as they don't say anything rude about the fact they can't read my signature, I'd be delighted to welcome.
Join the club. I can't sign either now these days. Great to talk to you, Hazel. Look after yourself.
Right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye to you. Hazel Edwards there.